Have you ever noticed that even though there's so much secular evidence that the Christian Bible is a reliable historical text, that there's hard evidence that Jesus did claim to be God, did die by method of crucifixion, and did rise again after 3 days, and we do have evidence from non-Christian texts, not necessarily to support the claim of resurrection, but certainly to support the former two claims. From Tacitus writing in 116 AD, Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty, here referring to crucifixion, during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate. From Josephus, writing in 93 AD, at this time there was a wise man who was called Jesus. His conduct was good, and he was known to be virtuous, and many people from among the Jews and the other nations became his disciples. Pilate condemned him to be crucified and to die, but those who had become his disciples did not abandon his discipleship. They reported that he had appeared to them 3 days after his crucifixion and that he was alive. From Pliny the Younger, writing in 112 AD, but they, the Christians, declared that the sum of their guilt or their error only amounted to this, that on a stated day they had been accustomed to meet before daybreak and to recite a hymn among themselves to Christ as though he were a god. Yet while there's that non-Christian evidence and the eyewitness evidence itself from the 4 Gospels given to us in the Christian Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there are groups such as the Muslims who deny Jesus died by crucifixion and was resurrected 3 days later, though chief of the Muslim sins is the claim that Jesus didn't claim to be God in the first place, and they join modern-day Judaism in its denial of Jesus not only as Messiah but also as God. Though there is clear evidence, such as in John 8:58, where Jesus says, "Before Abraham was born, I am," in John 10:30, where Jesus claims that I and the Father are one, in the cases where Jesus even accepts worship in Matthew 14:33 and Matthew 28:9. And yet, despite all this evidence, Muslims continue in their false denial of Jesus' divinity, and Jews continue in their false slander of who was meant to be their Messiah. Which is why this video is titled that they have eyes but they cannot see. The phrasing comes from Jesus speaking in Matthew 13 verses 13 to 15. Though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not hear or understand, in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing but never understanding, you will be ever seeing but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become callous. They hardly hear with their eyes, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. So we as Christians may choose to continue debating and fighting and warring with Muslims and Jews, and there certainly is a place for that. For those Christians who have been called to evangelize to Muslims and Jews, I certainly do salute you for your service and salute you for the level of expertise and depth of knowledge when you are going out to these groups of people. However, I think there really is something to be said about those whose hearts are hardened, that it becomes a little unproductive on the individual level for you to be arguing and debating your Muslim and Jewish friends in your promotion of the Christian worldview. There comes a point where I think you have to discern whether or not it's productive to continue such discussions, or you may want to move on to other people in your life who are open, whose hearts are softened, and are more willing to receive the good news that you are wanting to share to them. Though what about those people whose hearts are hardened? What is to be done with them? Kana Arima from Oshi is a good example of someone who has eyes yet she cannot see. We see bits and pieces of her arc where she as a child pursues acting as a career. She leans into that identity, and one of the primary motivators for that was to make her mother happy. So it's not because her mother was then able to support her child and she could be proud of the child that she raised. Kana's mother wanted to live a life of living in luxury, socializing with the rich and wealthy, being a member of high society, and Arima certainly had the eyes to see that. She could see how her pursuing acting was a means for her mother to gain, not necessarily for Arima to continue to grow in her career and to be fulfilled in a purpose. She could see the destruction that her mother was being led into, yet at the same time, she could not see. And out of a desire for love and compassion from her mother, her family ends up in an unfortunate place. Yet in this scenario, someone reaches out to her to re-find her purpose. A certain Aqua Hoshino comes along to reignite Arima's passion for acting, Arima's passion for performing, and this all culminates in season 2, where she finally has the chance to shine as her own person, not just as a child who is needing her mother's validation, but as an actor who can stand confidently in her identity. For those with eyes yet they cannot see, for those whose hearts are hardened, it's a beautiful thing to pray for such a person, that God may soften such a heart. It's a beautiful thing to lean in and love this person, to still be kind and compassionate despite one's differences, to still reflect Christ upon such a person. It's all ultimately up to God and his plan on how such a person is led, but God can work through us to be a witness to such people. Yes, they have eyes, yet they cannot see, but God is one who is able to open such eyes so that they can. If you're new here on the Christian Anime Podcast, I'm Podcast Son. I'm not a pastor, but I am just a normal guy talking about how anime is Christian. If you'd like to see some of my work, then this playlist is the one just for you.